Hi, my name is Trail. Recently, I've been getting a lot of requests to do a full video on this Knight Vambrace template that I offer. So today, that's what we're going to be doing. I've already got this template available, so all I'm going to be doing is showing you how to construct this from the exact template that you can get yourself. So let's go over exactly what we're going to need for this project. Obviously, we've got our template. That's going to be step one. From there, we have our main materials, which in this case is going to be 5mm craft foam. And for the details, we're going to be using 2mm craft foam. To glue things together, I'm going to be using contact cement. You could use hot glue if you want. I have not used hot glue for foam in a while, but if it's what you have available, it will work. I will, however, be using hot glue in this project for the elastic straps that are going to be holding all of these pieces together and keeping them to my arm. Start by cutting out your template. I usually like to cut my templates out with my X-Acto knife, but scissors will be more convenient for all these straight lines. Once that's cut out, trace the template onto 5mm foam using a pencil or a pen. The line will show up more clearly if you're using white foam, but I can usually see the ink on black foam just fine. Also, if you're using black foam, you could try a silver Sharpie, but I haven't had great luck with those. Cut out the foam pieces with a craft knife or box cutter. Make sure your blade is sharp. I got this sharpener at a camping store, but there are plenty of different types. Craft foam dulls blades very quickly, and a sharp blade is important for getting clean, straight lines. Before we start shaping the pieces, pay attention to which hand you want the vambrace to fit. The point at the top of piece 1 should line up with your middle finger knuckle. Once that's double checked, heat the pieces into a slight curve. You only need to curve the pieces across one direction, but you could add a little shape by rounding over the knuckle edge if you want. Once you're happy with the shape, use a rotary tool to lightly sand the edges to round them a bit. This isn't absolutely necessary if you don't have a rotary tool, but it helps the foam look just a bit more like it could be a different material. While you're doing this step, make sure you are wearing goggles and a respirator. Foam dust is really bad for you. You do not want it getting into your eyes or your lungs. Now, before we get to gluing, we need to decide how we want these pieces to layer into each other. I'm only going to put detail where it's going to be visible. This is where we need to decide how we want this set up. The standard option is going to be piece 3 on the bottom, piece 2 in the middle, and piece 1 on top. You can see how we get that sort of layered armadillo kind of look, and it gives us a little bit of flexibility there in the wrist. A couple other options. You can put the wrist piece in the middle if you want, so that you have a clear hand piece and forearm piece, and then you flex over the wrist piece there, or wrist piece on top to cover your joint that way. It depends on how you want it to look. The reference pictures I've got for this piece are that sort of armadillo kind of look. Recently, I've started to enjoy this more because the pieces kind of have an easier time moving together. But I've got another gauntlet I'm going to be showing you here pretty soon that's going to use this. So for the sake of this tutorial, we're going to go with the armadillo. Now we're going to add some trim. I cut several straight strips of 2mm foam 3/8 of an inch wide. Apply contact cement to one side of each strip and then to the face of the 5mm pieces. I kept my strips about 1/4 of an inch away from the actual edge. Using this method, you have to bend the strips into shape, which can pucker the foam. So if you want it absolutely smooth, I recommend that you pre-cut the exact shape you want your details to be before gluing them on. Also, depending on how you stack the armor plates, you only need to add trim to the visible edges that aren't hidden under each other. On the forearm piece, my detail strips didn't quite meet, so I'm adding a diamond-shaped detail to cover the gap. I'd like to use this time to point out that you can make these gauntlets as plain or as detailed as you want. Now before we can glue everything together, it's time to paint. I used Plasti-Dip spray to seal the foam pieces and give them a less foamy texture, and then used silver spray paint as the base coat of paint. This helps it look like a nice stainless steel, and there's plenty more that you could do to this in terms of weathering, such as dirt or rust, depending on how you want this piece to look. Once the pieces were dry, I hot glued my elastic straps in place. One underneath all 3 pieces to hold the scale effect in place, one around my palm, and one around my forearm. Make sure you let the hot glue dry and cool in between each strap so that if you put it on to try and check the fit, that you don't accidentally burn yourself. All right, and now that our glue has cooled, we're able to get this on, and here's what it looks like. You could go ahead and get these a little higher up on the hand if you wanted, if you want this to sit flush with the knuckles. To get that armored look, I kind of like having a bit of overhang there. It feels a little more realistic. And again, if you wanted to kind of round that forward, you could. This is where we start getting into some of the trickiness of, with this pattern, you're gonna wanna know where you're planning on having your arms at most of the time, because it doesn't really like to twist with you. It will, but then it ends up looking more like foam and less like metal. Another option for that is if you wanted to turn this into more of a kind of 2-piece gauntlet, you could add an underside here that would be a little more solid, and then you'd have these hand pieces connected to it. Other than that, that is how you put this template together. Thank you for watching. If you already had this template, I hope this was helpful. If you're interested in this piece and you don't have the template already, I'll have a link down below to my Etsy store. I've got this template as well as several others. Some of them already have tutorials. Some of them have not been published yet, and I've got some upcoming videos for you if you're interested in some more stuff like this. If you enjoyed this particular piece, I've got another gauntlet video coming out pretty soon. This one's actually going to be based on a video game character. So if you want to see a slightly more stylized version of this, I've got something else coming out here, hopefully in the next couple of weeks. So thanks again for watching, and I'll see you later.